Growing up, there were few delicacies in life greater than a Happy Meal at McDonald's. I can still remember trips to our local Mickey D's, excitedly waiting in line and taking in the atmosphere. The smell of French fries, the nostalgic color palette of the 90s, the dingy brown tiling on the floor, the sound of children screaming coming from the play area. And everywhere you looked was the imagery of the colorful cast of McDonaldland characters. The playful clown Ronald McDonald, the delightful criminal Hamburglar, Dee from Always Sunny, and of course, who could forget, Grimace. The bizarre but lovable purple character always stood out the most to me. I was a huge fan of the animated wacky adventures of Ronald McDonald's short films, and spent way too much of my childhood watching those tapes. And Grimace was easily the best part of those movies, with a similar appeal as that of Patrick Star from SpongeBob. But one day, Grimace and all the other McDonaldland friends, save for the clown, just seemed to disappear. I grew up and forgot about the big purple guy. Then every now and then I'd find myself chowing down on some McNuggies, and I'd remember all the good times Grimace and I had together growing up. And now with McDonald's releasing the new special edition Grimace birthday shake earlier in the year, the blobular creature has been enjoying a major comeback in the public eye. It seems people all over the world are clamoring for everything Grimace. A star is reborn. With Grimace on everyone's minds these days, I thought it was high time that we got to the bottom of the burning question that people everywhere want an answer to. Is Grimace a kaiju?
But before we can answer that, there's one thing we need to clear up. Just what exactly is a kaiju anyways? The history of the word kaiju is an interesting one. In its most literal translation, the word means strange or mysterious beast, but its common use in modern day is more akin to the word monster. When the word kaiju is used, it is most commonly in reference to daikaiju, or giant monsters, such as Godzilla and Gamera. Fans of these films tend to leave the dai off though, and kaiju by itself is what is stuck in the cultural imagination. The term kaiju wasn't used heavily until the 20th century with the emergence of the aforementioned giant monster movies. While the word dates back to Middle Chinese, it's unclear how much it was used in traditional Japanese folklore, where the terms yurei and yokai are used more commonly to describe fantastical creatures. Within the context of monster movies, kaiju come in a myriad of different types and forms. Kaiju are generally inspired by creatures from the real world, but with unique adaptations that set them apart from their real-world counterparts. Not all kaiju resemble dinosaurs though, as over the years we've seen plant kaiju, bug kaiju, primate kaiju, even canine kaiju. Heck, even Clifford the Big Red Dog is technically considered a kaiju, and a daikaiju at that. Now that we've defined kaiju, there's a few other Japanese terms that we should be aware of. The first is the word kaijin, which translates to strange person. This term would be used to describe creatures like the human vapor, Matango, or even Frankenstein. Many of the villains from Power Rangers would fall under the kaijin banner as well. In a nutshell, the term kaijin refers to any fantastical creature that is sentient, human-sized, and has a generally humanoid form. Another word worth knowing is seijin. This word essentially means alien, and is used to describe different extraterrestrial species, such as X-Seijin from Final Wars, or Baltan Seijin, aka Alien Baltan, from Ultraman. Okay, now that we have a basic understanding of Japan's complicated system for classifying fantastical beings, let's get back to our quest. Is Grimace a kaiju? Well, before we can answer that question, we need to get a solid understanding of who Grimace is as a character. Grimace has been in and out of the public spotlight for decades, but his life is something of an enigma. When Grimace was first introduced in 1971, he was portrayed as an evil, four-armed villain obsessed with stealing milkshakes and cokes. He was even called Evil Grimace, serving as the antagonist within the high fantasy world of McDonaldland.
Because the evil Grimace had grabbed all the cups. Where's the Coke? Where are the shakes?
In commercials, we see him stealing and hoarding milkshakes and cokes, only for Ronald McDonald to show up, donning an elaborate disguise so that he can trick the villain out of his loot. However, by 1972, the evil would be dropped from his name and the character would be rebranded as a protagonist alongside Ronald McDonald. The number of arms was reduced to a much less evil 2. From here on out, Grimace would generally be depicted as a dim-witted, bumbling simpleton and best pal of Ron McDon. A new character would even be introduced to the McDonaldland lore, giving us our first look at the extended family of Grimace with Uncle O'Grimacy. Uncle O'Grimacy is interesting because he represents a different morph of Grimace, the ultra-rare Irish Emerald version. This is because Uncle O'Grimacy was used to promote the new Shamrock Shake. Grimace would continue to appear in McDonald's commercials throughout the 80s and 90s, becoming a staple of the fast food chain's branding. My dude even starred in a commercial alongside the future president. Truly the best timeline.
Together, Grimace, we could own this town.
At the turn of the century, Klasky Csupo, the animation studio behind Rugrats and Rocket Power, would team up with McDonald's to produce a series of 6 animated shorts based on the McDonaldland lore. Thus, The Wacky Adventures of Ronald McDonald was born. Here, Grimace's characterization remains largely the same as prior commercial appearances, but there's an emphasis on the fact that he's a bit of a coward. In the second Wacky Adventures of Ronald McDonald animated special, The Legend of Grimace Island, we are treated to an origin story for the purple guy, and let me just say, it is utter perfection. The whole special is just incredible. It's a seafaring adventure complete with pirates, among them the defecting McNugget gang, and a scene where Ronald McDonald uses his magic to turn Grimace into a surfboard, so that he can surf on him, set to a complete bop of a musical number. Did I mention that the music is by frequent Klasky Csupo collaborators Mark and Bob Mothersbaugh of Devo fame? By the end of the episode, we learn that Grimace hails from a small village on Grimace Island, which is populated with the rest of his species. We also learn that Grimace is not only the name of the character, but also the name of his entire species. Not only that, but the word Grimace is used heavily in the language of the Grimace, often as an adjective, such as this.
Thank you, your Grimaceness.
Oddly enough, the Grimaces are depicted as a culture of indigenous islanders, insulated from the outside world of McDonaldland. Now, the special never specifically states how Grimace came to be removed from the island of his people and living among the citizens of McDonaldland, but let's just say it's not a great look for Ronald McDonald. Moving into the early 2000s, McDonald's would shy away from the McDonaldland marketing device, and the cast of characters outside of Ronald McDonald slipped into obscurity. Until 2023, that is, when Grimace would make his comeback into widespread cultural recognition as one of the year's biggest memes and icons. The exact nature of Grimace's being is murky at best. Hell, even high-ranking officials at McDonald's don't seem to have a clear answer as to Grimace's existential state. In 2010, a McDonald's spokesperson described the ambiguous creature as an anthropomorphized taste bud, which is horrifying. Why on earth would he be a taste bud? That's one of the worst things I've ever heard. Lovecraft himself couldn't have devised such a horrifying creature as a taste bud monster. Seriously, what the f***? And this is supposed to make people hungry? According to other reports, he is the embodiment of a milkshake, which is weird to think about since he was originally depicted as a milkshake thief, which would mean he's a cannibal. Or perhaps he is some sort of colonial milkshake organism, and by combining with other milkshakes he grows in power? Super disturbing for sure. Next time you're drinking a milkshake, just remember that there might be a little essence of Grimace in there. But even this is hardly a satisfying conclusion. Like, why would he just be a living milkshake monster? And if they were going to make him a biological shake man, why wouldn't they make him more like Master Shake, cup and all? Plus, how often are milkshakes a deep purple like that? There's just too many questions. And of course, according to the animated films, he's part of some sort of indigenous island population, which I guess doesn't preclude him being either a taste bud or a milkshake, but then it begs the question of how they got to that island. It's truly amazing to think that the closest we have to an explanation for Grimace is a taste bud or a milkshake. No wonder this character has endured the test of time. So yeah, I guess you can decide for yourself what the f you think Grimace is. I guess I would kind of lean towards milkshake because I at least feel like I heard that growing up, but him being a taste bud certainly heightens the inherent horror factor in Grimace as a character. As you can see, classifying Grimace is an exceedingly difficult task. Some might even call it a fool's errand. But if some fool is gonna run that errand, well, it might as well be me. The lore surrounding Grimace has shifted considerably over the years, and it's hard to say just what is or isn't canon to the character. Heck, even McDonald's seems to be a bit mystified by the purple enigma. So just what the f is Grimace? Is he a kaiju? Let's review the facts. Right off the bat, we can definitively state Grimace does not qualify as a daikaiju, as he is not giant in size like Godzilla. However, that doesn't disqualify him from being a kaiju of normal size, such as Pigmon from the Ultra series. While the Grimace species does seem to exhibit an otherworldly quality, based on the legend of Grimace Island, it seems safe to say that they are terrestrial, and thus wouldn't be accurately described as Grimace seijin. Grimace is an amorphous blob-like creature, similar to Hedorah. In his original depiction, he sported 4 arms, which certainly fits with kaiju design conventions. Additionally, Grimace went from an evil antagonist to a good guy, which is a classic kaiju move that both Godzilla and Gamera exhibited in their careers. However, we need to touch upon one key fact here. The Grimace is capable of speaking the same language as the people around him, a trait that is practically unheard of among kaiju. The only time we've seen a monster in a Godzilla movie speak human language was in Godzilla's Revenge with Minya, but that all occurred within a dream. We've seen monsters talk to each other on occasion in the Godzilla series, but always in their own kaiju language. The small exception here would be the English dub of Godzilla vs. Gigan, which depicts a conversation between Godzilla and Anguirus as occurring in English. However, it should be noted that in the Japanese version they are speaking monsterese, so I'm not counting this one. Also, in the original Ultraman, the Science Patrol has to go to great lengths to translate Pigmon's monsterese, so I think it's safe to say that as a general rule, kaiju can't talk, and if they can, it's monster talk. So the Grimace's ability to use speech is significant, and in my mind this is what really tips the scales for me. While I don't think it would be inaccurate to describe Grimace as a kaiju, as he is clearly a strange f***ing beast, in my professional opinion, it is more accurate to call him a kaijin. Grimace is human-sized, has a generally humanoid form in a Super Sentai sort of a way, and lives among and is able to communicate with other people in his world. In my book, that puts him more squarely in the kaijin camp. I think the really important takeaway of this video is that we need a Grimace kaiju crossover. Whether that means a Godzilla vs. Grimace movie, or maybe he's an ongoing villain in a McDonald's themed season of Power Rangers, but this is a character just begging to be inducted into the Tokusatsu universe. Alright guys, I think that about wraps it up for me. Let me know where you land with the Grimace kaiju debate in the comments. I'd love to hear your opinion on this fascinating topic. Until next time,
keep it grimacy.